Not all heroes wear badges. Some crawl through thorns with blood in their fur and a secret around their neck. Blood soaked the black and tan coat of the Belgian Malinois, matted thick where brambles had slashed his flanks. Yet he pressed on, every stride a testament to purpose. The dog's sinewy frame shuddered under the weight of the unconscious child draped across his back, a girl no older than 7, limp as a rag doll, her tiny arms swaying with each trudging step through the untamed Montana wilderness. Marshal Cole Whitaker froze mid-step at the edge of his porch, steam curling from the chipped mug clutched in his hand. His eyes locked on the approaching animal, emerging from the tree line like some ghost of war. Draped over the dog's shoulders, the child's pale hair glinted in the early light. Her skin was streaked with grime, her breath barely visible. Most dogs would have collapsed under the strain. Most strays would have bolted at the first sign of man. But as Whitaker descended the steps, instincts honed in, the military kicked in. He saw the harness, half concealed beneath mud and gore, military grade, unmistakable, and in the animal's eyes, discipline, resolve, training. This was no lost mutt. 3 days passed. The girl never spoke a word. What Marshal Whitaker found tucked inside a hidden flap in the dog's collar would unravel everything he thought he knew. It tied the girl, the dog, and himself to a buried darkness that had festered on the outskirts of town. A darkness with roots far older and deeper than anyone realized. It chilled him to the bone. Leave a like and tell us your thoughts in the comments. Mention the city you're reading from. Let's see how far this story travels. Pine Hollow, Montana. You'd miss it if you blinked. Wedged between mountain ridges and blanketed in evergreens, the town's single dusty street held everything folks needed. Murphy's Vet and Medic, Carson's General Store, the Marshal's Outpost, and the Griddle House Diner. Here, people measured travel by time, not distance, and gossip moved faster than the mountain wind. Marshal Cole Whitaker hadn't planned on coming back. 15 years in the Army Rangers, most of that time as a K-9 handler, had hardened him more than he'd like to admit. Now 45, the weather in his bones matched the lines around his eyes. The kind of lines pain etched, not just time. He'd returned 3 years ago after cancer stole his wife, Evelyn. The town welcomed him gently, the way people do with those they pity. What they didn't see, what they couldn't see, was the deeper wound. His son, Luke, now a deputy 1 county over, hadn't shared a meal with him in years. Whitaker's cabin sat a good mile outside the edge of town. Secluded, quiet, the kind of place where you hear birds before you hear people. That's where the dog brought the girl, like he knew exactly who to find. 17 miles up from Pine Hollow, tucked in the pines along a narrow switchback road, sprawled the compound of the Covenant of Redemption. 15 years ago, Reverend Caleb Vaughan had raised a cross over a hand-built chapel. Today, it had grown into a fortified community of true believers. Every Sunday, half the town filled the pews to hear Reverend Vaughan preach salvation through retreat, cutting ties with the corrupt world beyond the mountains. When the lumber mill shut down, leaving most folks with nothing but empty hands and deeper faith, Vaughan's message stuck. Dr. Lena Murphy had known Cole Whitaker since they were 10, back when tree forts and scraped knees were the biggest problems they had. Over years and late-night coffees, she'd never hidden her quiet unease about the Covenant's expanding hold on Pine Hollow. "Faith's fine," she'd said to Cole just last month, stirring cream into her mug. "But Caleb Vaughan looks at this town like it's something he owns, or worse, feeds on." Still, Lena never let her suspicions interfere with her work. She treated the church members with the same care she offered everyone else, even the elusive wife of Reverend Vaughan. Rumor had it she died in childbirth years ago, though no one in town could say they ever really knew her. No one in Pine Hollow could have guessed that a half-dead war dog and a voiceless child would peel back the calm surface of their mountain town and reveal something vile and rotting beneath. The sun had just begun to claw its way over the eastern ridge when Marshal Whitaker spotted movement at the edge of the woods. At first glance, he reached instinctively for the sidearm at his hip. Out here, a creature that size could be anything, bear, wolf, or worse. But what stepped out of the shadows wasn't wild, it was deliberate. And it was carrying something. "God almighty," Whitaker muttered, lowering the mug he'd been halfway to sipping and setting it on the porch railing. He moved slowly, down the steps, boots silent against the planks. The dog, black and tan, powerful and battered, stopped 20 feet from the cabin, its amber eyes locked onto his, the weight across its back. A girl, small and deathly still, shifted slightly with the motion. The dog stood rigid, protective, fierce, even in exhaustion. "Easy now," Cole said, voice low and even. His hands rose slightly, fingers open. "It's okay, boy. Easy." He moved cautiously, and with every step, the scene came into sharper focus. The girl couldn't be more than 6, maybe 7. Her clothes were torn, her skin streaked with dirt and scratches, and her bare foot dangled lifelessly. Blonde hair clung to her face, tangled like she'd been dragged through a thicket. A low growl rumbled from the dog's chest when Whitaker came within 10 feet. Not a threat, but a warning. That sound, Cole knew it well. This dog wasn't strayed or feral. It was trained, controlled, still holding to its mission even while bleeding. "I'm not here to hurt her," he said, matching the tone he'd used countless times overseas, calming military K9s in chaotic war zones. "Let me help." The growls subsided. The dog's shoulders dipped ever so slightly, a fraction of trust. Whitaker moved closer and saw it. The harness, mud-caked, blood-streaked, but unmistakable. Military issue. A ghost from the past had walked out of the woods, and it had something to say. This wasn't some lost pet. This was a trained service dog, military, maybe even federal. When Cole Whitaker was within 5 feet, the dog moved with practiced care. He lowered himself to the ground, letting the girl slide gently off his back onto the bed of pine needles below. The motion exposed the dog's wounds more clearly. A jagged gash tore across his flank, barbed wire likely, and his paws were raw, cracked open from miles of rough terrain. The child remained motionless. Her breathing, though faint, was steady. Her face was streaked with tears and dirt. Whitaker knelt beside her slowly, careful not to make any sudden moves. The dog's eyes never left him. With a practiced touch, he checked the girl's pulse. It was there, fast but holding. Her lips were dry and cracked. Deep shadows darkened the skin under her eyes. "She's severely dehydrated," he muttered, not expecting an answer. But the dog's ears twitched, as if he understood. Gently, Cole gathered the girl into his arms. The dog rose instantly, muscles tensing with a soft growl that trembled just under the surface. "You can come," Whitaker said, his voice firm but calm. "You did your job. Let me do mine." Instead of heading into town to Dr. Lena Murphy's clinic, he carried the girl into his cabin. Instinct said to keep this quiet, for now. Something about this felt too precise. Too arranged. He picked up the old landline and dialed Lena's private number. "I need you at my place," he said, as soon as she picked up. "Bring your kit and come alone. No questions. Just urgency." 20 minutes later, the crunch of tires on gravel announced her arrival. The dog, still positioned beside the couch like a sentry, lifted his head but didn't move. His body stayed coiled in place beside the child. "Cole, what the hell's going on?" Lena's voice cut off the second she stepped into the living room. Her gaze flicked from the girl to the dog and back again. "Who is she? What happened?" "The dog brought her," Cole said simply, motioning toward the Malinois. "I found them at the tree line. She hasn't woken up." Without another word, Lena dropped to her knees beside the sofa. Medical instincts took over. She moved fast, clinical, quiet. She was draped across his back, Cole added, like he was trained to carry her. Carried her all the way here. Lena worked in silence, her hands quick and practiced, checking vitals, assessing injuries, dehydration, exhaustion, scattered scrapes and bruises, nothing life-threatening. Then she paused. She gently lifted the girl's wrist and turned it toward the light. "Cole," she said quietly, revealing a cluster of small, circular scars near the joint. Whitaker's stomach sank. Those weren't the kind of marks a child got falling off a bike. "These aren't accidental burns?" Whitaker asked, his jaw tightening, as Lena held the child's wrist up to the light. "They're deliberate," she confirmed. Her voice had dropped to a quiet, grave register. "And look at this." She gently turned the girl's head, revealing a faint tattoo behind her ear, barely larger than a thumbprint. It was simple but chilling, a geometric design shaped like an eye inside a triangle. Lena met Cole's eyes. "I've seen that symbol before." "Where?" he asked, though he already had a sinking feeling he knew the answer. 7 years ago, she said, a young woman came into the clinic, pregnant, said she was from the Covenant. She had the same marking. Never saw her again after that first appointment. Cole's face darkened. The Covenant compound. That'd be my guess, Lena said quietly, as she began preparing an IV for fluids. Whatever this little girl's been through, it wasn't just an accident. Someone kept her, hurt her. And this dog. She glanced at the Malinois, still unmoving beside the couch. He didn't just happen to find her. He got her out. Moved by something between instinct and memory, Cole knelt beside the dog. He brushed away the crusted dirt and dried blood from the animal's harness. The name patch was there, half obscured, Ranger, and beneath it, USARMYK9. Cole's throat tightened. The sight hit like a bullet from the past. Ranger, he said softly. The dog's ears flicked forward at the word. Recognition, obedience, identity. Yeah, Cole murmured. You've done one hell of a job. He turned back to the girl. Now let's figure out who she is and what she was running from. Reaching for the side table, he picked up a glass of water and held it gently in his palm. Water, he offered, voice low and steady. You think you can try some? The girl didn't answer, but her eyes followed the motion of his hand. Slowly, Cole extended the glass, making sure not to startle her. After a long hesitation, her small hands reached out, shaking slightly as she took it. She sipped cautiously, like someone expecting the water to vanish. Can you tell me your name? He asked gently, once half the glass was gone. She didn't answer, just looked down. That's all right, he said, easing back in his chair. You don't have to talk, not yet. His voice softened. You're safe here, I promise. Then came a soft knock at the front door. The girl flinched so hard she nearly dropped the glass. Water sloshed over the rim. Ranger shot to his feet instantly, placing himself between her and the door, like a shield forged in combat. No bark, just silence and tension, his body coiled and ready. It's okay, Cole said quickly, rising to his feet. It's just Dr. Murphy. She's the one who helped you while you were sleeping. Lena stepped in quietly, her eyes scanning the room until they found the girl, now awake and watching her with wary curiosity. She softened. Hey there, she said, crouching beside the sofa again. You're a tough one, aren't you? Hey there, Lena said, her voice soft as gauze. I'm Lena. I'm a doctor. The girl didn't speak, but her grip on Ranger's fur tightened. She didn't pull away when Lena knelt beside her. Every movement from the doctor was narrated gently, giving the child time to anticipate each touch. The exam was careful, unrushed, performed as if the girl were made of glass. Not once did she speak, but she didn't resist. Later in the kitchen, Lena leaned against the counter, arms crossed, voice low. Physically, she's improving. The fluids are working. No internal trauma, just dehydration, exhaustion, superficial wounds, probably from moving through wilderness. But, Cole asked, catching the tension that hadn't left her face since she arrived, but those burns we saw, they're not isolated. There are more. She shook her head slowly. On her back, old scars, patterned, and that tattoo behind her ear? Cole said nothing, jaw tight. Lena looked up. That's not just religious iconography. I've seen enough kids to know the difference between an accident and a message. Cole scrubbed a hand over his face, bristles rasping in the quiet. I have to report this. Call it in. She's a minor. And say what? Lena countered, her tone measured but firm. That a mute girl was carried out of the woods by a retired military dog. No ID, no statement, no guardian. He didn't respond. She'll be pulled into the system before we get a chance to understand what happened, Lena continued. You know that. I'm a sheriff, he said. I can't just sit on this. You've got 48 hours before protocol forces your hand, she said. Use them. Find out where she came from. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed on the table. He checked the screen and froze. Mark, his son, never called. He answered. Mark. Dad, came the reply, tight with tension. Wanted to give you a heads up. We got a missing child report. Light of the Covenant filed it. Cole's eyes flicked toward the living room, where the girl sat silently beside Ranger, curled into the dog's side like she belonged there. What's the report say? 7-year-old girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, missing from their compound 3 days ago. Reverend Carter's daughter. When did they file it? Just this morning. Said they assumed she was hiding, claimed they searched the grounds, expanded the perimeter today, then made it official. 3 days? Cole's voice cut sharper than intended. And they're just now reporting it? They say they handle things internally, Mark replied, and the disgust wasn't even veiled. They've already started plastering towns with flyers. You're the closest jurisdiction. Appreciate the call, Cole said, mind racing. Mark hesitated. Dad, I know how you feel about Carter, but if this connects to your case, follow the book. He's got friends on the county board. The call ended. Cole turned to Lena. They say the girl is Carter's daughter. Just filed the report this morning. Lena's lips tightened. Convenient, don't you think? A girl shows up traumatized, and now Carter's playing the concerned parent. Could be coincidence, Cole said, but the words rang hollow. She looked him dead in the eye. You don't believe in coincidence, not since Kabul. Before he could respond, the old porch hinges creaked. They both turned toward the sound. The girl stood in the open doorway, barefoot and still pale, but upright. Ranger was beside her, posture alert. She was staring into the tree line. The dawn was breaking through the pines, washing the forest in soft gold. But her expression wasn't awe, it was fear. Cole stepped forward carefully. What is it? The girl pointed toward the tree line. Her hand shook, but her eyes, wide, urgent, left no room for misunderstanding. Cole followed her gaze. Two vehicles crested the rise where the road met his land, tires kicking up dust in the golden morning light. A black SUV led the way, its tinted windows gleaming. On the hood, unmistakable in gold, the emblem of the Light of the Covenant, an eye enclosed in a triangle. Behind it, a second truck rolled in, less polished, more practical. But the men who stepped from it moved with the same unnerving coordination. Ranger let out a low growl, deep in his chest. The girl pressed into his side, trembling. The SUV's driver's door opened. Reverend Ethan Carter emerged, tailored in charcoal grey, his silver hair combed to perfection, every movement measured. His smile was warm, polished, too polished. Sheriff Cole, he called out, voice rich and easy. I believe you've found my daughter. The girl didn't flinch. She froze. Her fingers knotted into Ranger's fur like a lifeline. Cole stepped forward, slowly, placing himself squarely between the cabin and the arriving group. His posture looked relaxed. His right hand hovered inches from his holster. Didn't expect company this early, Reverend? Word travels fast in a town like ours, Carter said smoothly. One of Dr. Lena's assistants mentioned a child. Naturally, I had to come at once. He peered past Cole toward the porch. My Lily's been missing for 3 days. You can imagine the worry. Cole didn't blink. 3 days is a long time to wait before filing a report. Carter's smile tightened. She wandered off during one of our outdoor lessons. We believed she was hiding somewhere on the grounds. Lily's always been delicate since Rebecca passed. Lena appeared beside Cole. Her tone was cool, clinical. You didn't think to contact the sheriff's office. We're a self-sufficient community, Doctor. We have our own protocols. She hasn't said a word, Cole said, watching the Reverend's face. She hasn't spoken in years, Carter replied with practiced sorrow. Selective mutism, diagnosed by a specialist. His gaze flicked to Ranger. And this dog, was he with her? The dog found her, trained, military, name's Ranger. There was a shift then, barely perceptible. One of Carter's men turned ever so slightly to glance at the other. A flicker of unease passed between them. Not lost on Cole. Carter's expression didn't falter, but something hardened beneath the surface. I appreciate the care you've given her, but now it's time to bring my daughter home. Cole didn't move. I'd like to speak with her first. She doesn't speak. There are other ways to answer a question. The men behind Carter took a subtle half-step forward. Not concerned fathers, not parishioners, muscle. I understand your caution, Sheriff, Carter said, but this isn't your jurisdiction. She belongs with her family. Cole turned toward the porch. The girl stood with her back pressed against the wall, pale and motionless. Ranger hadn't budged. His body remained rigid, eyes locked on the men in black. Cole crouched slowly, keeping his voice level. Is that your father? The girl's eyes darted to Carter, then back to Cole. No nod, no shake. Are you Lily? He asked gently. Still no answer. But then she reached into the pocket of her oversized jacket and pressed something into his hand, shielding it from view. Cole unfolded it with care. A crayon drawing, a squat house, a triangle above the door. Inside, a single eye. Stick figures clustered beneath it, all in black. One figure, smaller, held a leash. Red circles marked both its arms, perfectly aligned with the burns Sarah had shown him. Cole folded the drawing and slipped it into his jacket. I'll keep this safe, he whispered. and I'll find a way to help you." He straightened and turned to Carter. "I'll need to see your ID and documents proving your relationship to the child." Carter's smile was thin now. "You know who I am." "Doesn't matter. Protocol, especially when minors are involved." For a moment, no one moved. Then Carter nodded. One of his men stepped forward, portfolio in hand. "Birth certificate for Lily Grace Carter," the man said, passing over papers. "Medical records, school enrollment, diagnosis from Dr. Westfield Cole, took them, but didn't look away from the girl. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The documents looked legitimate. Birth certificate, 7 years old. Ethan and Rebecca Carter, listed as parents, born at Pinewood Regional. The medical records tracked regular checkups until about age 5, then dropped off. The last entry was nearly 2 years old. Cole flipped to the back. And the death certificate for Rebecca? Carter's expression dimmed, the mask cracking for just a moment. "She passed during a mission trip to Guatemala. We have the documentation at our administrative office. I'll provide it later." Cole nodded slowly, filing it all away. Everything looked right, too right, but the drawing, the scars, the silence, Ranger's unwavering vigilance, none of that matched the paper trail. "I'll need to verify these with the county clerk," he said, "and I want a formal medical report from Dr. Mitchell on the girl's condition for our records." "Of course," Carter replied, though his voice had cooled. "But surely this can be handled while Lily returns home to recover. She's been through enough." Sarah stepped in, calm but firm. "I'd recommend at least 24 hours of observation. She's still dehydrated and running a low-grade fever. There's concern about infection." Carter's smile didn't return. "We have trained medical staff within our community." Sarah's tone hardened. "But no one with hospital privileges. As the attending physician, I have the authority to determine the best setting for her recovery." A pause, just long enough to reveal the power struggle behind the words. Then Carter inclined his head, carefully neutral. "One day, then she comes home. I trust she'll be transferred to the clinic in town. I've arranged for a room at Pinewood Regional." Sarah lied with practiced ease. "The pediatric unit is better equipped." Carter nodded tightly. "Very well." He turned to his men. "Brothers, return to the compound. Inform Sister Martha that Lily has been located and is receiving care. Prepare her room for tomorrow." Then back to Cole. "I'll accompany my daughter to the hospital." "You're welcome to follow," Cole began, but Sarah cut in, brisk and professional. "Hospital policy limits visitors during the initial assessment. You can join her this afternoon during regular visiting hours," Sarah said, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. The Reverend's jaw tightened, just a flicker, but enough. "I see." "And the dog," Reynolds added, "stays with me. I'll be contacting military records to track his handler." Something flickered across Carter's face. Not surprise, something closer to calculation. "Very well, but I expect a call once she's admitted." "You'll get it," Sarah said coolly. As the churchmen returned to their vehicles and pulled away, Sarah and Reynolds stood in the hush that followed, the gravel drive settling, the woods still again. The girl remained frozen on the porch, watching the SUV vanish with wide, stricken eyes. Only when it disappeared around the bend did her shoulders finally sag. Inside, with the girl resting in the spare bedroom, Ranger curled tightly at her side, Sarah paced the kitchen while Reynolds brewed coffee. "They had everything," he said quietly. "Every document looked real." "Of course they did," Sarah snapped. "The Light of Salvation isn't some roadside cult. They have money, lawyers, influence, but none of it adds up. Those burns, that tattoo." Reynolds pulled the crayon drawing from his pocket and laid it on the counter. "She gave me this before she said a word. Look," Sarah leaned in. "The triangle with the eye, same as the tattoo, and the red circles, right where her injuries are. And there's no pediatric unit at Pinewood Regional," Sarah added. "I lied. We've got a day, maybe 2. "It's enough," Reynolds said, pouring the coffee. "Mark warned me. Carter has friends on the county board. One wrong step and they'll bury this." Sarah crossed her arms. "What about the dog?" "The harness," Reynolds said. "Ranger, U.S. Army. I'm calling someone, an old buddy from K9 Command. If this dog's a missing asset, we'll find out who his handler was, and if that ties to her, and then we've got a whole new thread to pull." Reynolds drank and grimaced. "There's something else. You've been the town doctor 7 years, right?" Sarah nodded. "You said you saw Carter's wife once for prenatal care, but never again. And I've worked shifts at Pinewood Regional since residency," Sarah said, eyes narrowing. "If the Reverend's wife gave birth there, I'd remember. That would have been front-page news around here." "So maybe none of it's real," Reynolds said. "The paperwork? The story? Even the name before Sarah could respond, a small sound caught their attention. The girl stood in the doorway, Ranger beside her like a shadow. Her face was scrubbed clean now, strikingly beautiful, hauntingly familiar. Same blue eyes as Carter, same bone structure, but not the same expression. Hers held something Carter's never had, fear and hope. In her hand, another drawing, this one newer. Two girls holding hands identical in every detail. A large dog stood between them. Sarah's breath caught. Twins. Reynolds knelt, voice soft. Is that true? You have a sister. She looks like you. The girl nodded, barely, but it was a nod. She's still at the church. A second nod, stronger. Reynolds and Sarah locked eyes. Not one child, two. We'll help her too, Reynolds promised, even as 100 complications surged through his mind. The girl's eyes welled. She stepped forward and touched his badge with delicate fingers, then pointed to Ranger, then to herself. Reynolds swallowed hard. You're part of this team now. She's telling us something about Ranger, Sarah murmured. How he found her. Reynolds studied the dog again, his bearing, his discipline, the steady gaze, not a stray, a soldier. Ranger, he said slowly. Were you trained to find her? Did someone send you? The girl dropped her gaze. Then, reaching into her pocket, she pulled out something small and metallic. She stepped forward and placed it in Reynolds's hand, gently, reverently. Dog tags. The chain was broken, the metal worn. Reynolds turned them over, his breath catching at the names stamped there. Miller, Jessica L. Sarah leaned closer, reading his reaction. You knew her? He nodded, the past flooding back. Jessica Miller, Marine K-9 handler. I served with her in Afghanistan. She was one of the best. He looked at the girl. Where did you get these? She touched the tags, then pressed her hand to her heart. She gave them to you, Reynolds said softly, to keep safe. The girl nodded. The weight of it all settled hard in his chest. Sarah, can you stay with her? I need to make some calls. Sarah nodded, her gaze flicking to the dog tags in his hand. Behind a closed door, Reynolds pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Michael Cortez, his old contact in the Army K-9 program. Jim Reynolds, came the familiar voice. Been a while, brother. What's going on? I need information, fast. German shepherd named Ranger, tactical harness, possible handler. Jessica Miller.
Silence. Then Cortez's voice returned. Colder now. Where'd you hear that name? Reynolds clenched the dog tags. The dog found a child, walked her out of the woods, and straight to me. Jessica's tags were in the girl's pocket. Another pause. Tense. Calculating. This line's not secure. I'm texting you a number. Call it from a burner. And Jim. What? Be careful. You just stepped into something big. 20 minutes later, Reynolds stood in the narrow alley beside Pinewood Creek's hardware store. The town's only payphone cradled to his ear. The line clicked after 2 rings. Identify yourself, came a clipped female voice. Sheriff James Reynolds, Pinewood Creek, Montana. Former Army Ranger. Service number 874032945. Michael Cortez sent me. It's about Ranger and Jessica Miller. A pause. Then another voice took over. Male. Cool. Authoritative. Sheriff Reynolds. This is Agent Daniel Walker, Department of Defense. We need to establish what you know about Staff Sergeant Miller and the K-9 unit designated Ranger. Reynolds laid it out. The silent child, the burns, the tattoo, the dog, the drawing, the tags, the church. The silence that followed was long, heavy. Then Walker spoke again, low and grim. Staff Sergeant Miller didn't die in service. After her discharge, she was recruited for an undercover operation, domestic terrorism probe, target, the light of salvation. She went dark 3 months ago. Reynolds stiffened, and Ranger disappeared from a secure DOD kennel the same day. We presumed they were compromised, and you did nothing. We were preparing a raid. But the church has political insulation. Deep ties in local government, law enforcement, even judiciary. We needed irrefutable evidence. Reynolds looked down at the dog tags in his palm, then back toward the cabin, where the girl, Jessica's legacy, slept under Ranger's protection. You've got it now, he said. You just didn't know where to look. And now, Reynolds asked, now we have a child who escaped, Walker said. And Miller's dog found her, which suggests Miller may have trained him for exactly this. His voice turned hard. Sheriff, we need you to secure the girl. Keep her hidden. Can you do that for 72 hours? Reynolds hesitated. The child's drawing flashed through his mind. The 2 girls holding hands. A twin, still inside. There's another child, he said quietly. She has a sister, identical, still at the compound. A pause. Then, we're aware there are multiple children. The operation will account for them. But we need time to move without tipping off Carter. He already knows she's with me. Another silence. This one heavier. Then we'll need to move faster. The line went dead. Reynolds hung up slowly. the receiver clattering back into place. The air felt colder now. He turned and walked back toward the truck. The forest seemed to press closer with every step. Back at the cabin, Sarah sat on the floor beside the bed, reading softly from an old children's book. The girl rested beneath a blanket. Ranger curled protectively at her feet. When she saw Reynolds, she sat up, eyes alert, watching. Reynolds knelt beside the bed and opened his hand, showing the dog tags again. "These belong to someone I cared about," he said. "She cared about you too, and I'm going to do everything I can to help." The girl reached forward. Slowly, deliberately, she took the tags and placed them over her neck. Then, without a word, she reached out and gently touched Sarah's wrist. A moment, small, quiet, but it thundered in Reynolds' chest. She was choosing trust. He stood. "We've got a window. 72 hours, maybe less. They're planning a federal operation. But if Carter gets spooked, he'll bury everything," Sarah finished grimly. Reynolds nodded. "And I don't think Jessica Miller just disappeared. I think she died trying to get one of those girls out." Sarah's expression darkened, and Ranger finished the job. Outside, a crow cawed from a treetop, loud and sudden. Ranger lifted his head, ears twitching. Reynolds moved to the window. A glint of black glass. A vehicle parked far off on the ridge, watching. "They're already here," he murmured. "We need to move." The low thrum of rotor blades cut through the early morning stillness. First distant, then unmistakably close. Reynolds was already moving toward the window. He didn't need to see it to know. He heard the cadence of the rotors and recognized the sound like a bad memory. "Police helicopter," he said grimly. "County Sheriff's Department, most likely. They're doing an aerial search." Sarah's face went pale. How would they know to look here? Reynolds didn't answer at first. The beat of the blades pressed down on the cabin, louder with every second. "They wouldn't," he finally said, "unless someone told them exactly where to find us." The implication landed with the weight of a hammer. Only one person besides Sarah and the girl knew about the cabin. Mark. The idea twisted in Reynolds' chest like a blade. The helicopter's shadow flashed across the treetops, sunlight strobing through the blinds. Reynolds' training kicked in. Calm, fast, focus. "We need to move. Now." He grabbed their go bags, gear he'd packed the night before. Sarah knelt beside the child, gently waking her. The girl stirred, eyes wide, immediately attuned to the urgency in the room. No questions, just readiness. A survival reflex she shouldn't have had to learn. Reynolds pulled her jacket over her shoulders. She didn't flinch this time, just clutched Ranger's harness with both hands. The dog steadied beside her like a living shield. "There's a ravine about half a mile east," Reynolds said. "Dense tree cover. They won't spot us easily there." "Jim," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her pale face. "If Mark told them." "We don't know that," he snapped too quickly, then softened. "We can't know that, but we also can't afford to wait and see." He turned to the girl. "Can you run?" A nod. "Stick close to Ranger. He'll guide you. Sharp. Focus." A trained alert. Reynolds followed. Tucked under the porch, half buried in a pile of firewood, was a small black box, unmarked. A tracker. "Damn it," he breathed. "That's how they found us." Sarah stared at it. "How long has it been there?" "Long enough," Reynolds muttered. He scanned the woods again. "We're compromised. They're not searching anymore. They're closing in." He crushed the tracker beneath his boot, the plastic cracking under the weight. "New plan," he said, mind racing. "We can't outrun this forever," he murmured, almost to himself. "But maybe we can outsmart them." Sarah looked at him. "What are you thinking?" Reynolds' eyes locked on the girl, then Ranger. The child was still, waiting, trusting. "We split up. Listen to me," Reynolds said, kneeling to the girl's eye level. Voice calm despite the tension coiling beneath it. "We need to walk through the woods, fast and quiet. Ranger will lead us. Can you do that?" The child nodded solemnly. They slipped out the cabin's back door, just as a helicopter crested the western ridge. The forest swallowed them whole, ancient pines towering like sentinels, their needles softening every footstep. Ranger trotted ahead, choosing a path with uncanny precision, as though he understood exactly what was at stake. For 20 breathless minutes, they moved in silence. When the chopper returned overhead, its spotlight slicing to the canopy, they froze, barely breathing. The child didn't panic. She crouched between Reynolds and Sarah, her small body tense but still, as if she'd practiced this kind of escape before. Eventually, they reached the ravine. Reynolds guided them beneath a low overhang of roots and logs. Nature's camouflage. Dirt scented and cramped. It was invisible from above. "They haven't spotted us," Sarah whispered, holding the child close. "But what now? We can't stay out here forever." Reynolds checked his phone. No bars. Figures. "There's a fire lookout tower 3 miles northeast. It's abandoned now, but used to have emergency gear. Maybe even a radio. 3 miles. Sarah looked at the girl, who was pale and exhausted. "I know." Reynolds rubbed his face. The scrape of stubble sounded loud in the hush. "But we're running out of options." The child tugged on his sleeve. When he looked down, she mimicked walking, her expression set. "You can make it?" he asked. She nodded, then pointed to Ranger, who stood watch at the edge of the shelter, his ears pivoting like radar. "Yes," Reynolds said softly. Ranger will help us. They rested for an hour, shared what little food they had, water, jerky, and a chocolate bar Sarah broke into thirds. The helicopter moved off, but no one relaxed. They knew what was coming. Why would they give up so easily? Sarah asked. They didn't, Reynolds said. The flyover was just to flush us out. They want us to leave tracks so their ground teams can follow. As if on cue, Ranger stiffened. A low growl rippled from his throat. He stared back in the direction they'd come. Someone's coming, Reynolds whispered. He crawled to the edge of the shelter and scanned the woods through the underbrush. Footsteps, voices, and then, Dad! The voice froze him. Mark. Reynolds stood. Stay here, he said to Sarah. Then stepped into the open. Mark emerged from the trees in full uniform. Sidearm holstered, but hand resting near it. Two deputies flanked him, uncertain. You abducted a child from medical custody, Dad. Mark said, tone sharp. A mute girl with a history of running. You've interfered in a custody case, and now you're evading law enforcement. He nodded toward the radio strapped to his vest. And you're trying to contact someone about an operation? What the hell are you involved in? Reynolds stared at his son, eyes steady. The Reverend isn't who he says he is. The church, it's not just a congregation. It's a front. That child didn't run. She escaped. Look at her arm, Mark. He took a step closer, not threatening, just grounded in truth. Look at the burns, the tattoo, the fear. Mark hesitated. One of the deputies looked visibly shaken, glancing back toward the trail like he was second-guessing everything. The girl peeked out from the shelter behind Reynolds. Just enough. The expression on her face, haunted, pleading, met Mark's eyes, and something changed in him. Mark's gaze shifted to the girl. Burns, pattern, precise. The first crack appeared in his composure. There are proper channels, he began. Not when the abuser owns half the county. Reynolds cut in. Not when federal agents confirm there's an undercover op inside that compound. Weapons, trafficking. Mark stiffened. Federal agents? Before Reynolds could answer, Ranger growled, deep and guttural, his head swiveling toward the stairs. Boots, multiple pairs, moving fast. Who else knows we're here? Reynolds asked, already drawing his sidearm. Sarah yanked the girl behind the desk. Just my partner, Mark said, but doubt colored his voice. I didn't radio in. Then the door exploded inward. 3 men stormed inside. Tactical gear, not police. Each wore a black shoulder patch, an eye inside a triangle. The light of salvation. The leader raised his rifle, not at Reynolds, at the child. Hand over the girl, he ordered. The Reverend wants his daughter back. Reynolds stepped between them. There's a federal investigation underway. You're obstructing it. The man laughed, cold and sure. There is no case, Sheriff. Just a washed-up cop and a stolen kid. He glanced at Mark. Good work, Deputy. The Reverend appreciates loyalty. Mark's stunned silence told Reynolds everything. He hadn't sold them out. Not knowingly. I didn't report our location, Mark said, weapon half raised. Didn't have to. The man sneered. Your car's been tracked since dawn. The Reverend doesn't gamble. Tension coiled, thick as wire. For armed men, one child between them. Reynolds didn't blink. Mark, he said quietly, you need to choose. Look at her. Look at the burns. Her eyes. You think sending her back to that man is justice. Mark's jaw clenched. A beat passed. Then, drop your weapons, Mark ordered. This is a police matter. You don't have jurisdiction, the leader growled. Our orders come from the Reverend. He stepped forward. Reynolds made a small motion. Ranger launched. A blur of muscle and fury. The dog struck the leader squarely, sending him sprawling. His rifle clattered across the floor. Reynolds dropped to a knee and fired into ceiling. Federal operation. Stand down or face obstruction charges. Mark didn't hesitate. He moved beside his father, weapon steady. As Deputy Sheriff of Conway County, I'm placing you under detention pending federal review. The room stilled. The church enforcers, no longer so sure, lowered their weapons slowly. The Reverend won't be pleased, one muttered. He can take it up with the Department of Defense. Reynolds snapped. Then to Mark. Zip ties. In my pack. Why this works. Mark's decision. You delay his choice just long enough to create real suspense. But when he acts, it's decisive, satisfying, and earned. The antagonists, they're not cartoonish. Their calm confidence and the psychological leverage they try to exert feels real. Ranger's action. The dog remains a force of both violence and intelligence. His attack is quick, strategic, and grounded in his bond with Reynolds and the girl, while Mark secured the intruders. Reynolds turned back to the radio. This is Sheriff Reynolds. Authorization code 749 Alpha. Patch me through to Agent Walker, Operation Salvation Light. Static crackled. Then, Walker here. Go ahead. Timelines accelerated. The girl says something's happening tomorrow. Large scale. Possibly 20 children. Church security tracked us. Tactical gear, private vehicles. We're holding through. 3. Understood, Walker replied, calm and precise. We're mobilizing. Confirm location. Fire lookout tower. Northeast Pinewood. Holding position. Extraction ETA 90 minutes. Maintain radio contact. Reynolds set the mic down. The child stepped closer, sliding her small hand into his. Her eyes were solemn, trusting. Behind them, Sarah tended a gash on Mark's temple. You all right? She asked. Mark nodded slowly. So this operation, it's real? Very, Reynolds said. Domestic terror. Weapons stockpiling. Child exploitation. Carter's deep. The ops classified. Mark's eyes flicked to Ranger. The dog? Military K-9. Part of the op handler vanished 3 months ago. Presumed compromised. Mark exhaled, jaw tight. I've heard whispers. Shipments. Fence perimeters. Private drills, but nothing concrete. His gaze drifted to the girl. Still hasn't spoken? No, Reynolds said. But her drawings, rituals, symbols. She has a twin still inside. She's trying to warn us. The girl tugged on Reynolds' sleeve. She mimed a calendar. Then 10 fingers. Twice. 20 kids, Reynolds said aloud. She nodded, urgent. Sarah's face drained of color. If what Walker said about trafficking is true, she didn't need to finish. Reynolds relayed the intel to Walker. Confirmed, came the grave response. Timeline is critical. Stay put. We'll bring you to command for mission planning. As dusk crept over the treetops, Reynolds surveyed the battered lookout tower. Sarah, Mark, Ranger, the girl, even the restrained church thugs. It had started as a custody call. Now it was a war. The radio flared to life again. Sheriff Reynolds. Hostile movement inbound. Prepare defenses. Reynolds met his son's eyes. Copy that, he said. We're ready. Later. As Sarah flipped through the girl's drawings, her medical detachment eroded by horror, she whispered. These illustrations, the repetitive detail, suggest she's witnessed the ceremonies multiple times. It's part of their indoctrination. Reynolds nodded grimly. She's been inside that chapel. She knows exactly what happens there. What's working perfectly. Ratcheting stakes. You escalate from local threat to national level operation seamlessly. The girl's communication, her nonverbal cues remain central, keeping tension high and engagement strong. Mark's arc, his transition from skeptic to believer, is now deeply believable. Tone. You strike a precise balance between thriller pacing and emotional weight. Optional suggestions. 1. Reinforce the girl's urgency. Oh, you could consider a single moment where she begins to draw during the radio call, as if she senses they're almost out of time. 2. Add a symbolic echo. Oh, echo started as a custody call, later in the final chapters. To close that loop, it's powerful. The breakthrough came 3 hours earlier. Facial recognition software had matched the sleeping child to a Department of Defense photo. Her name, Lily Miller, daughter of Staff Sergeant Jessica Miller, the undercover operative who vanished inside the compound. It confirmed what Reynolds had already begun to suspect. Lily wasn't Reverend Carter's daughter. She was the daughter of the agent sent to expose him. What about the sister? Mark asked during the final briefing. Lily's drawings keep showing a twin. Had we confirmed her existence? Walker nodded and slid a folder across the table. Emma Miller. Facial match confirmed against the school photo pre-deployment. The picture showed 2 identical girls, blue-eyed, blonde, arms around each other in gap-toothed grins. Reynolds felt the air leave his lungs. The contrast between that vibrant image and the silent, shell-shocked child who clung to Ranger in his cabin was staggering. Jessica brought her daughters into an undercover op? Mark asked, disbelief cutting through his voice. Not initially, Walker said. She went in alone, tracking weapons caches. After her husband died in a car wreck, we prepared to extract her. He tapped the file, but she insisted on staying. Said something new was happening. Kids were involved, so she embedded deeper. Walker's tone shifted, darker. 3 months ago, we believe Carter discovered her identity. That's when she dropped off the grid. He turned to Ranger. We think Jessica trained the dog to escort Lily to safety. The timing lines up. Ranger disappears from a military kennel, and days later Lily escapes. Reynolds looked at the shepherd, loyal, alert, always at Lily's side. The animal didn't just protect her. He had a mission. Any word on Jessica's location? Reynolds asked. Walker shook his head. Nothing confirmed. Based on timeline and intel, we have to assume the worst. Reynolds' jaw tightened. I'm not convinced she's dead. He gestured toward Lily, who was crouched over a new drawing. She keeps depicting a woman beneath the chapel. If Jessica's alive, that's where they're keeping her. Walker stared at the sketch, then nodded. Then this op just changed. 3 high-value targets. Lily, Emma, and Jessica. His voice took on the clipped tone of command. We update the mission plan. Immediately. Later. Reynolds sat beside Lily as she worked. She didn't speak. But Wade joined her. She looked up, acknowledging him with those unblinking eyes. Ancient, calm, knowing. Ranger shifted slightly, making space in their small circle of trust. Tomorrow morning, Reynolds said gently, we're going to where your sister is. We're going to bring her home. Just like Ranger brought you to me. He hesitated. And if your mom's there, we'll find her too. Lily's pencil stilled. She looked up. For a long moment, her gaze held his. Then she handed him her newest drawing. An underground chamber. A storage cabinet in the chapel's antechamber. Drawn back to reveal a hidden stairwell. Coordinates Coordinates, scrawled in blocky, childlike letters. Reynolds stared. Survival tactics, something Jessica must have taught her. He grabbed his radio, voice tight with urgency. Walker, we have something you need to see. What's working exceptionally? Emotional weight. The reveal of Lily's identity and her mother's mission adds depth without melodrama. Lily's agency. She remains mute but instrumental, not passive. Ranger's significance. His mission-first loyalty builds toward a powerful payoff in the climax. Mission escalation. You layered tension by shifting from extraction to full-scale rescue and hint at a mother still alive, which hooks the reader hard. Optional enhancements. 1. Symbolic callback. Oh, when Reynolds sees coordinates, he might briefly remember Lily's hand miming map points earlier. And that shows she's been trying to say this all along. 2. Titan Walker's tactical voice. Oh, make his transition from intel processing to field ops slightly sharper. Reflects urgency and professionalism. The operation launched before sunrise. Federal teams move like shadows. Silent, precise. Reynolds, Mark, and Ranger were assigned to Chapel. Chapel team in position. Reynolds whispered into his mic. A waiting ghost signal. A beat. All teams in position. Walker's voice crackled. Execute on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. Chaos erupted in perfect sequence. Floodlights flared. Sirens split the silence. Reynolds' team breached the chapel doors. Splinters flying. Within seconds. Sanctuary secure. Clear. Find a hidden entrance. Reynolds and Mark moved fast into the antechamber. Ranger led the way. Tail rigid. Nose low. He stopped, ears locked forward. The cabinet was exactly where Lily had drawn it. 3 men shoved aside, revealing a narrow stone stairwell descending into darkness. Basement located. Reynolds reported, moving to investigate. Proceed with caution, came Walker's reply. Primary team just secured 23 miners from the east dorm. No sign of Carter. A chill snaked down Reynolds' spine. The stairs gave way to damp stone. A cold corridor. Metal bars. A prison car beneath a church. Federal agents. Reynolds called. Light sweeping. Identify yourselves. A figure stirred at the farthest cell. A gaunt woman stood slowly, shield in her eyes. He raised his light. Late 30s. Malnourished. But the eyes, Lily's eyes, sharp, defiant. Staff Sergeant Jessica Miller? She blinked. Then faint smile. Took you long enough, she rasped. Did Ranger find you? Is Lily safe? She's safe, Reynolds said, already unlocking the cell. He brought her straight to my cabin. Relief softened her, but urgency returned fast. Emma, she said, voice rising. Carter keeps her in his quarters. Leverage. You have to find her. We're sweeping the compound, Reynolds assured her. Still no sign of Carter. Then Mark's voice cut through comms. Tight, grim. Dad problem. Surveillance picked up a vehicle, leaving a hidden garage 10 minutes before breach. Driver matches Carter. Passenger's a young girl. Blonde. Jessica's composure cracked. He has a helipad, she said, at his hunting lodge, 5 miles west. He's been prepping this for months. Reynolds relayed the intel. Air support redirected. He and Mark helped Jessica up the stairs into pale dawnlight. Reynolds' jaw set. This ending wouldn't be clean. It would be personal. I'm going after them, he said. Walker can finish the mop-up. Mark met his gaze. No hesitation. I'm with you. All the way. Ranger rose. Silent. Focused. Waiting. Reynolds nodded. We'll need him too. If anyone can find her out there, it's Ranger. Why this version works. Pacing and urgency. The beat-by-beat rhythm keeps it cinematic and edge of your seat. Tactile details. You feel the sweat, the stone, the silence before the breach. Immersive. Jessica's presence. She's no damsel. Her urgency drives the narrative forward and raises the stakes. Carter's escape timed perfectly. The story now pivots into a final chase with emotional and ethical weight. Ranger's role, recentered as critical to the mission, not just emotionally but tactically. You're building toward a powerful moment with him. As the sun breached the horizon, it poured golden light across the battered compound. Agents cuffed dazed cultists. Medics tended to rescue children wrapped in thermal blankets. The night's horrors were slowly giving way to morning. But for Reynolds, Mark, and Ranger, the mission wasn't over. They headed west, toward the hunting lodge, toward Carter. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a final chapter in a story that began the moment a scarred German shepherd emerged from the trees with a silent child beside him. Reynolds had once thought life was done asking anything of him. A quiet cabin, a dwindling badge, regret like static in the background. But pain, he'd learned, doesn't simply go away. It hollows. It etches. It waits for meaning to return. When Lily crossed his threshold, mute, burned, broken, it wasn't just her life that changed. She'd come to be rescued, but so had he. The trail to Carter's lodge was steep and winding. The woods still slept, birds quieted by the scent of exhaust and fear. Ranger led the way, nose locked in focus. Mark kept his rifle ready. Reynolds checked his radio. Any sign of air movement? Negative. Came Walker's voice. We have eyes on the helipad. It's cold. Carter hasn't lifted off yet. Time was thinning. They picked up speed. They reached the ridge just as a dark SUV appeared below, pulled beside the lodge. A man stepped out. Tall, controlled. Carter. He opened the rear door and lifted a child. Emma. Blonde hair tangled. Face pale. A thin silver chain wrapped around her wrist. Ranger growled, ears flattened. Reynolds knelt beside him. Mark. Flank left. We cut him off before he reaches the pad. Copy. They move like ghosts. Through the trees. Through the pain. Carter was speaking into a sat phone, unaware of the approach, until Ranger broke from the trees. A blur of muscle and instinct. The dog lunged. Carter turned too late. The sat phone flew. The girl fell backward into snow. Ranger hit Carter square in the chest, driving him to the ground. Gun drawn. Reynolds was there in seconds. Don't move, he barked. Mark emerged, rifle trained. Carter struggled beneath Ranger's weight, eyes wild. You don't understand, he gasped. She's mine. They all are. You're done. Reynolds cut in. This ends today. He snapped cuffs over Carter's wrists. The man's delusions didn't stop. Whispers about salvation, prophecy, divine will, but they didn't matter. Emma ran to her sister's rescuer, throwing herself into Reynolds' arms, sobbing. Ranger nuzzled her gently, tail wagging low. Later, as a helicopter lifted them all out, Jessica reunited with her daughters. Mark silent in thought. Ranger curled at Reynolds' feet. The sheriff stared out over the pines. Somewhere below, the chapel stood empty. The prisons cleared. The symbols burned away. It was over. But something else had begun, because pain has a way of hollowing us. It makes us ghosts of our former selves, sleepwalking through days, letting purpose slip through our fingers. But renewal is always possible, even in the final act, even when the story seems spent. When Ranger stepped from the forest with Lily beside him, he carried more than a child. He carried a call, a mission that would awaken something long dormant in a man who thought he had nothing left to give. Redemption doesn't arrive in grand gestures. It's in showing up, in saying yes, in answering pain with courage. For those of us in our 50s, 60s, even beyond, it's tempting to believe our best chapters are behind us, that the world doesn't need us anymore. But sometimes the world does, desperately, and the only question is whether we will answer. So ask yourself, what child, literal or symbolic, is waiting silently, hoping someone will see their pain? What loyal companion, steadfast as a German shepherd, might be guiding you toward a mission only you can fulfill? It's not too late, not for purpose, not for healing, not for hope. The call is already echoing. All that remains is your answer. Final notes. The emotional climax blends seamlessly with the action. A heroic rescue under fire, and a soul's rescue under grace. The closing essay-style reflection transforms the entire story into a parable for aging, renewal, and responsibility. It leaves readers not just satisfied, but deeply stirred.